Okay, so I'm going to talk just a moment here about the crosscut handsaw and making sure that you guys remember from the intro to industrial tech class, different types of handsaws are designated either as a rip saw or a crosscut saw, basically by the teeth and the shape of the teeth, and if they're staggered. So this one you can see is staggered. So this is a crosscut saw, handsaw. If it's a rip saw, the teeth aren't staggered and they're kind of, there's not really a rake angle, there's more of a straightness to it that helps to kind of go as you're parting the grain. So just two different types of handsaws that give better efficiency when you're cutting. So I'm going to use the crosscut handsaw here for this crosscut to make. Now, some things for you to remember. Make sure that you are pulling the saw blade across the entire length of the blade. Don't short stroke it. I mean, you'll wear out your blade on your saw a lot quicker and you'll get uneven wear spots by doing that. So I like to remind you just to make sure that you are using the entire length of the blade when you cut. So as we put the saw up, so make sure with your stance, you want about a 15-degree angle, so that way you've got more surface contact between the blade and the end when you're cutting. If you get too high of an angle, of course, you can kind of move off and you can influence that cut and you won't get quite as straight of a cut. So using a lower incline angle on the way you hold that saw and the way you cut it, gives you more surface contact once you get into the cut, helps you to actually cut straighter than if you're up like this. So notice too, remember from the demo before in the intro class, I want to keep that saw blade in line with my arm and my stance as I go back and forth and I'm pivoting at the shoulder. So if I get like this, the pivot action is more at the elbow, you're going to wear yourself out a little bit more doing it that way. So, and of course, some of this is related to your height. So that is it. I'm going to go ahead and set up and start to make this cut so you can see that, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the cut and we'll check for squareness. Oh, last thing, remember, if my saw is like this, I'm going to actually be cutting a bevel cut and I will be out of square to the face. I want to make sure that I am keeping that angle squared to the face of the board. If I cut like this, then I'm going to be creating a miter cut and I will be out of square to the edge. So as you cut with the handsaw, make sure that you are cutting both square to the face of the board and square to the edge to get a better cut. You don't want a bevel and you don't want a miter on this. So watch the angle and watch how you're holding the saw when you make the cut. All right, just a couple other words of warning here as you do this. Not a big deal, but certainly not as professional. So you can see my cut. So I got some tear out. Now, this is kind of to show you. So as I put this through, so I got a little tear out of both of these. Not a big deal. I can clean them up and it'll still look nice. Not too worried about this piece because this is going to be my seat and I'll cut that piece out, but here on the backrest I definitely got to clean this up and take care of that tear out. Now I had a pretty long span across here, and if you notice, I know I had time lapse on, but if you notice as I was starting to cut, the weight of the board kind of started to pull this down and it started to bind up in the middle. So my suggestion to you is maybe as you do this, find a way to hold that so it's not quite as big of a gap. That way you'll have a little bit more support on the board and it won't want to start to drop and kind of collapse in on your blade and make it a little tougher for you to cut. So, all right, so go ahead and take a try with that. I'm going to go ahead and also cut the seat piece. So, and then we will have these two parts ready for this board. All right, so now you can see here I got a better cut. I'm a lot nicer and more square on this. I did kind of get myself a little help. So now working here in the shop, I had the advantage of grabbing a couple of clamps to help me hold the board. That saves me some energy. Lets me not expend as much. So if you have a way that you can clamp a couple of C-clamps or other type of clamps and a way to clamp that board down, that will help you hold it. But again, you're fully capable, and I was that first cut, you know, I've got enough strength that I can hold the board stationary while I cut it as well. You're not always going to be in a situation where you have clamps to do it. So I took the first cut without clamps, the second cut with clamps, just to kind of give you a couple of different options to use there. Remember, as I go through, I've said this before, I'm not going to ask you guys to do anything that I myself am not willing to do. It really didn't take me a whole long amount of time to make these two cuts, probably about, shoot, I don't even think I have 10 minutes into taking these cuts, so, with the layout. So again, I'm not going to ask you guys to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. To me, that's kind of my idea of a real leader, is somebody who's only going to ask you to do things that they're willing to do themselves as well. So anyway, that's my little message, my soapbox for the day. So we're done cutting the seat. So this 42-inch piece is the seat, and the 45-inch long piece is the backrest. So we'll come back and lay out for the legs and cut those next.